This past spring, I was lucky enough to find myself in the Keys during the annual spring migration. And what's really cool about this, you hear that? It's a red-bellied woodpecker just came and landed up there. Anyways, what's really cool about this is there are thousands of birds that migrate from South America and all over the world, and the Keys are right along one of the major flyways. So the Keys are one of the first land masses that a lot of these birds see when they've been traveling for days and miles and miles and miles. So they stop and they rest. So it's a great place to see a lot of birds you've never seen before. So I went down to Fort Zachary Taylor, I believe is what it was called, in Key West, and I spent an afternoon looking for birds. And I didn't go out looking for like the larger shorebirds like herons and egrets or the gulls or anything like that. Instead, I went into some of the treed areas and I looked for the little teeny warblers that were known to be migrating through the area. And let me tell you, challenging photography, these little birds are very, very difficult because they're always deep into cover where there's no light. And as soon as you find one and acquire a good focus lock, they usually bounce away. So it's very, very challenging, but I managed to get some really good pictures of quite a few really neat species that I had never seen before. Let's go check them out. First up is this awesome little palm warbler. These little birds are fairly common in South Florida, but I'll never miss an opportunity to grab a few shots. And as you can see from the data, the ISO was 1600 and the shutter speed was 1/1600th of a second. I normally keep the shutter speed at about 1/2000th of a second for these little birds because they move so fast, but there wasn't enough light under the thick cover of the trees to get a decent exposure at that shutter speed, so I had to lower the shutter speed to 1/1600th of a second to get a decent shot. I followed this little bird around and was rewarded with a couple of nice shots of it eating a dragonfly. I changed the aperture in this shot to f7.1 because I wanted to get a little more depth of field, but this forced me to go for an even slower shutter speed because this bird was still deep in the shadows. The D500 is a very versatile camera that can easily keep up with these tiny little birds, even when they're choking down a large dragonfly like this last shot here. This next shot is an ovenbird. This was my first time seeing one of these birds, and it didn't stick around for very long. It's known to forage for insects on the ground, and that's exactly what this one was doing. This is the black-poll warbler, and I literally had about 1 second to grab this pic before this tiny little bird disappeared. I used single-point autofocus, put the single point on the bird's head, and the camera focused through all the branches and grabbed a nice shot, even though the bird was deep in shadow. The black-poll warbler is tiny. It weighs less than half an ounce or around 14 grams. But do you know what makes this little bird so cool other than its good looks? It travels almost 1,800 miles or 2,800 kilometers nonstop over the ocean. They fly at a speed of around 27 miles per hour or 43 kilometers per hour. This means that this little bird flies for over 80 hours straight. That's over 3 days with no food, no water, or sleep. That is absolutely incredible. Iguanas on the path, 2 of them in the historic ruins. Oh, there's another one. Look, there's a really green one. See the green one? Oh wow, that's bright green. Cool. As you can plainly see from that video, there are iguanas everywhere in the state park. In fact, they're all over the Keys now. Here's one shot that I really liked. This iguana was more of a blue color, but check out that eye. Man, these are neat looking lizards. Check out this little black and white warbler. This was yet another first for me. This bird was extremely busy, and it was looking under all of that tree bark for some food. I watched it for a little while and managed to get one good shot before it disappeared. And then I came across this white bird resting under the shade of a tree. I'm not too sure if this is a dove or a pigeon. I also don't know if this bird was an escapee from a zoo or a lost pet because I don't think this was a wild bird. If you have more information on what type of bird this is and where it may have come from, feel free to leave a comment. There's no doubt about one thing though. This is a beautiful bird, and I managed to get a very nice shot of it. You'll notice I lowered my shutter speed to 1/640th of a second because the bird was just sitting still. This allowed me to get a lot more light on the subject. I grabbed this shot simply because it made me laugh. I mean, look at the size of the nest this little mockingbird was building. Of course, I'm just kidding here. I think this is an old osprey nest, and this mockingbird was just using it to get a better view of the ground below. Either way, it made me laugh. This was my favorite warbler of the day. This is the Cape May Warbler, and you'll only see this bird in Florida during migration. I really like the colors on this bird and how they fit so well with that blue sky in the background. In this series of shots, the bird was eating this little red berry, and that's where I focused. You'll notice the lower half of the bird isn't in perfect focus in these shots. That's because I was using an aperture of f6.3. If I had chosen an aperture of f8, I think it would have been a little bit better because it would have given me a wider depth of field. I'm going to leave this video with this cool shot looking out over the beautiful blue water. This shot looks more like something you would see in California along the Pacific coast, but this was the south side of Fort Zachary Taylor State Park in Key West. Thanks for coming along with me on this trip. I had a great time, and don't forget to click the thumbs up button. And if you haven't already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Do it. Feel free to share the video, and don't forget to leave a comment. I always enjoy hearing what everybody has to say.